Hello, I'm Roseann Hanson.
And I'm Jonathan Hanson. I'm the one blocking your view of Uluru behind me.
We are the founders of Overland Expo, and today we're here to talk to you about the history of overlanding. So, a brief history of overlanding, or how inventive humans have modified personal vehicles to lend comfort and durability to how we explore the world, and how an enduring community of global nomads was born.
Humans have been traveling and camping for millennia, as shown by this amazing image from one of the very first Overland Expos. In fact, before the advent of agriculture, all we knew was traveling and camping. It wasn't until just about 10,000 years ago that we started settling down. But of course, at that point and that time, overlanding was not a vacation. It was just a means to an end. The explorers who moved west in the United States and north into Africa and into the interior of Australia were certainly overlanding, but I don't think they would have called it a vacation.
No. However, the introduction of the internal combustion engine in vehicles allowed a whole new experience. And look at this, 1910, Pierce Arrow debuted the touring Landau, and it had a fold-down sink, a chamber pot, and the rear seat converted into a bed.
In addition to the very early example of a trasharoo on the back, it looks like to me.
In leather.
In leather, of course.
Then in 1923, the Zagelmeyer Auto Camp Company, along with other companies, introduced kits for turning your Model T into an overland vehicle. Look at this.
The amazing thing about that Model T at the upper right is that as you cranked open the roof, the side beds automatically folded down at the same time, which is something that not many companies have even copied yet today.
Actually, it was the other way around. When you lowered the sides, the roof popped up.
Whatever.
But amazing, look at the space in there. There's 2 wicker chairs, 2 beds, and you could get an optional camp kitchen, which looks an awful lot like the Cairns kitchen of today.
So after World War II, we're still in what I call the Precambrian era of overlanding, but civilianized Jeeps and Land Rovers and Land Cruisers began bringing affordable four-wheel drive travel to people all over the world.
So by the late 50s, many of us grew up in the tradition of weekend camping in the national parks and forests, but it was largely an out and back static activity. This is actually a picture of my mom and their teardrop trailer and my 2 brothers.
So while Americans were camping a lot, as Roseann just mentioned, it was mostly a very static activity. You went somewhere, you camped for a weekend or maybe a little bit more, and then you went home. You fished while you were there, but you definitely had a destination in mind. And car camping equipment had pretty much strayed very little from a standard formula that had been around for a long time. Small trailer or a camper mounted on a pickup truck, a very heavy one, or you had a canvas or nylon tent and cots. Long gone were those ingenious things we saw from 50 years before that.
Then by the going over to Europe, though, in the 30s to the 70s, there was a lot of innovation, and amazingly, Maggiolina was marketing roof tents in 1930. Here it shows on some 1930s, 40s vehicles up into the 60s. Then also during this time, with Land Rover coming to the fore, there were a lot of keen overlanders coming out of England, Europe, taking off to Cape Town or Singapore from London or Paris or around the world. And this is the 1952 Oxford Cambridge Far Eastern Expedition, which really set the standard for overland expeditions from then on out.
So we're still sort of in the Precambrian era, and yet 1953, we were finally starting to see a little bit of innovation, especially with Don Hall's Alaskan camper, which gave you a full-size camper and still a heavy one, but one that could be lowered to reduce the aerodynamic drag of the camper. These are still around. Then in 1972, there was a big leap forward when Dave Rowe lightened that pop-top concept with the first four-wheel camper with an aluminum frame that was really a revolution and still around to this day, of course.
So in the 1970s, Gary and Monica Westcott and their Turtle Expedition Unlimited, they helped really popularize overlanding for the US market. They first started in a Series 2 Land Rover, and then in trucks mounted with four-wheel campers, and later they designed their own camper for pickup trucks. And we actually met Gary and Monica around this time in the high Arctic and Tuktoyaktuk during an overland trip. Of course, two wheels were going strong overlanding, and this is a really cool dude. Yeah. Robert Edison Fulton rode a two-cylinder Douglas motorcycle around the world, starting in 1932, including packing a pistol in a hidden compartment underneath the transmission there, under where his boot is, as you can see. He also carried a movie camera with him and shot 40,000 feet of film along the way. Parallel to that, Bessie Stringfield, she shattered the color barrier, and as a woman, she rode her Harley Davidson across the US in 1930. She repeated it 8 times over the years, and she also served as a civilian motorcycle courier for the US Army in World War II. Then, of course, in 1973 and 1977, a British journalist named Ted Simon circled the world on a Triumph motorcycle and later repeated that journey on a BMW. He wrote Jupiter's Travels and Dreaming of Jupiter, which inspired thousands of motorcycle travelers who followed him. And Ted, of course, has been to every Overland Expo starting in, I believe, 2011, and continues to come to the Overland Expos. As does Elspeth Beard, who in 1982 to 1984 became the first British woman to ride a motorcycle around the world. And she also wrote a book which has recently come out. There have been a lot of really intrepid motorcycle travelers, overlanders. All of these folks have come to Overland Expo many times. Lois Price and Austin Vince were amongst the first to come to Overland Expo and work with us. Lois was our first VIP instructor. Tiffany Coates, Ken and Carol Duvall, all amazing motorcycle travelers. Simon and Lisa Thomas are another couple of our favorite people. They're the most traveled motorcycle couple in the world since 2003, excuse me. They set off on what was supposed to be a 13-month trip, and it's still going. And they've been to the expo, I can't even count how many times. Almost as long as Ted. One of our regulars. Yeah. So by the 1990s, we're just about to hit the Cambrian explosion, as it were. Overlanding was trickling into America. And in contrast to the family camping we talked about earlier, we started to see the journey itself as being the goal rather than having a destination be a goal.
So it was about exploring new country, being completely self-sufficient, challenging yourself on a long journey, not just going out for the weekend and seeing how tough a trail you could conquer and then driving home.
So by the 2000s, overlanding gear that was popular in Australia, South Africa, and Europe was starting to come to America.
So 2005, 2007, we're hitting the Cambrian explosion. Suddenly Americans are being introduced to rooftop tents and 12-volt portable fridges that could keep ice cream frozen, or camping trailers that could follow your four-wheel drive vehicle anywhere the vehicle itself could go. All started becoming available, and finally becoming known to us when they've been known the rest of the world for a couple of decades yet. And then in 2007, I helped start a magazine called Overland Journal, which sort of coalesced all that Cambrian explosion stuff into one publication and brought the whole idea to new readership here. In our first issue, Graham Jackson told the story of his and Connie Rodman's trip through Africa in a Land Rover 110. And Chris Scott, a British motorcyclist who is a veteran Sahara explorer, also gave us a story of one of his travels.
And Graham Jackson was the first and has been the only training director for Overland Expo. He's been with us since the very beginning. And speaking of Overland Expo, 2009 was the first one at the Yavapai County Fairgrounds in Prescott, Arizona. It was amazing to see so many people coming together with this new shared interest in exploring the world by your own means on a motorcycle or four-wheel drive vehicle. 900 people and 20 vendors took part, and most of them are still Overland Expo sponsors and fans. We had four-wheel campers, Sportsmobile, Overland Journal, AT Overland, which was known as Adventure Trailers then, Equipped, ARB, Illuminous, Global Expedition Vehicles, Viking Off-Road,
Ursa Minor, KC Highlights, Off-Road Trail Tools, Camping Lab, Auto Home USA, Baja Designs, and of course, Gary and Monica Westcott of the Turtle Expedition were there, and Iron Horse BMW from Tucson.
You see some of the vendors there, and then we also introduced the training, of course, was part of it. It was quite a unique show. There was nothing like it in the world that combined a professional level trade show and training. So this was our first motorcycle course that Lois Price and Tom Collins put together for us. You can see at the top here, vehicle training. That's a group of sportsmobiles getting one of the very first trainings were offered. And in the lower part are the feature vehicles. So those are attendees' vehicles.
So in 2010, we moved to Southern Arizona for the second show in Amado. And this concept was already catching on really quickly. The second show was much bigger than the first. And we were starting to see people who had really no idea of what was going on, but had heard of this thing called overlanding and maybe seen a copy of the magazine, come to see what it was all about. And a big step for us, Land Rover joined us to build and sponsor our driving courses, and did a superb job right from the beginning. And also provided some of the best trainers in the world, working with, again, Graham Jackson, our director of training.
Yep. Land Rover joined us in 2011, and those trainers included about a dozen former team members from the famous Camel Trophy competition, which ran from 1980 to 2000, and it's largely considered to be the toughest 4x4 competition ever devised. And it wasn't just about top skills, but it was almost more importantly about teamwork and community. And the Team Spirit Award was almost more coveted than the actual win. And our training soon became known as the Camel Trophy Expedition Skills Training Area under Graham's leadership. It was a very, very popular part of Overland Expo.
We were also joined then by Jim Hyde and his Rawhide Adventures team in 2011, and they provided us with really top-notch motorcycle training with BMW.
The 2011 was quite a bellwether year, and this time 8-year-old Grace Howard, shown here sitting next to me with her club, the Rover Divas, pitched us on developing a kids adventure program since there were no kid-oriented activities offered at the expo. And Grace developed an amazing array of classes, lashing, knot tying. We did not have motorcycling, but I love that little shot because kids came and did all sorts of fun things. And I think that's a treasure hunt down on the right.
We also developed women's only classes on driving, riding, and mechanics, which weren't watered down men's classes. They were just classes that didn't have men standing around yelling at their wives to do something different, which worked very well. And Sarah Batten, who was Land Rover's lead trainer at Eastnor in the UK, and Christina Hall developed the program, which was fabulously successful and has gone on since.
So in 2014, we ventured east to North Carolina, and our first show there was at Taylor Ranch outside of Asheville.
And at Taylor Ranch, some of us got our first taste of moonshine. For many of us, it was also our last taste.
By 2015 in the West, we had moved to Mormon Lake outside Flagstaff. So we moved north and into May. And this photo is from the infamous Overland Expo, where we had quite some interesting weather, which had created some fabulous mud. And this is what we love to call the little disco that could, recovering a huge, I don't know what it is that.
I can't remember what that
kind
is
of
either,
truck that
but
is.
the disco pulled it out in one go.
Yep, that's Jim West's disco. So 2016, we had reached the tipping point at Mormon Lake with nearly 10,000 attendees, and it was time to find a better, bigger venue. And we moved in 2017 to Fort Tuttle, out just south of Flagstaff. And numbers just kept exploding. 12,000 people, 300 exhibitors. Look at this, just packed. Motorcycle was going crazy. At this time, Bill Dragoo came onto our team in-house. We brought the training in-house, working with Graham Jackson. Bill and his DART team worked with 7P Overland on the vehicle side and just really started improving the whole training program hugely.
Meanwhile, on the East Coast, we'd moved onto the beautiful Biltmore estate in Asheville, where we had 2 really great years. The venue was nice. The people there were wonderful. We had everything taken care of for us, and it was great while it lasted. But eventually, we needed to move on from there as well. So in 2018, we had another weather adventure, probably the most spectacular one yet, at Reed Branch, which...
No, yeah, at Reed Branch.
Yep, and the greatest thing about that was the driving course, which because of that sloppy weather proved to be possibly our best driving course ever. Certainly the most challenging one, certainly the one that rendered the most vehicles sideways, I would say. Yeah.
So here's the 2018 Overland Expo instructor team, and that's not including at least 15 Land Rover instructors who couldn't come to this meeting. But no, well, first of all, it's just a huge number of people. It had grown so much that it took that many people to just be instructors. And that's not including staff and volunteers. We practically used more people to run the show, volunteers, staff, instructors, than we had come to the whole first show. And note the row of kid instructors at the front, nearly all of whom started attending the show when they were only 6 or 7 years old, and here they are as teenagers. So by 2019, after 10 years, it's really become about passing on our passions through the next generation of overlanders and industry leaders. And this is Kids Adventure Program founder Grace Howard and me. And Grace is just finishing her freshman year at NAU in Flagstaff now. We sold the show to the family-owned Lodestone Events, who are carrying on the tradition, which is all about community. No matter what happens in the future, that will endure forever.
So now 2020, overlanding has become obviously not only extremely popular, but embedded in the culture. Now everyone knows what overlanding is. Everyone knows what a roof tent is. Everyone knows what you can do with vehicles now besides just going out for the weekend. So 50,000 people come to both shows now each year. And thousands of people who have come to previous shows are now out exploring the world, meeting strangers, making new friends, keeping the community alive. Even if for right now we have to do so virtually as we're doing here, still it's all about the community, and sooner or later we'll be back to doing it in person.
Hopefully we will see everyone in July in Flagstaff, or in the fall in the East Coast in Virginia. So thank you for joining us. I'm Roseann Hanson.
I'm Jonathan Hanson.
You can catch up with us at exploringoverland.com, where Jonathan has his Overland Tech and Travel blog, and I have my Field Arts blog. We'll see you around. Thank you.
Thank you.